He also said that every generation needs a revolution, Jimmy. The American dream is just that. Just a dream. War is a continuation of politics, only by other means. Politics is a continuation of economics by other means. This is our bank. This is our war. And this is our plan of attack.
Banks have become an essential threat to our democracy. So consider this
justice.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the internet. Please help support this station so this battle can continue forward. Revolution Radio! The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hello everybody, and welcome to feedback. Oh, geez,
okay, did that help?
Okay. Not helping.
This
is Stargate.
This is Stargate Cosmos
with Janet Lessin, Dr. Sasha Lessin, Kevin Estrella as host, producer, a bad painter, also known as Thomas Becker. And our guest is Elana Freeland. I've got horrible feedback.
You're echoing too much. It's got to be fixed. You're echoing.
Yeah, Matt, what do we do?
Am I echoing too?
It's coming back through Sasha's.
Sasha, turn off
your other computer or something.
What are you doing? Okay. Okay, so that is not helping. Anyway, let me read a little bit about Elana. And why don't I just bring on Elana, and then I'll go in and see if I can get this feedback off of
Sasha's computer.
So
Elana.
There's Kevin. Kevin's here too. Kevin, do you want to say hi to Elana? And I'll go back and see if I can figure out what's going on with his computer. Okay, Kevin?
Some of it's coming back through Kevin's, too. He needs to turn his volume down just a little bit.
Okay. Volume?
His speaker volume, not his voice volume.
Okay.
My speaker volume. I'm on a cell phone.
You sound okay to me. Both of you do.
How do I sound?
I'm the one with all the feedback.
Is that you, Elena? Hi.
Yeah, Elana.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a hard name. I'm sorry. But how do I sound?
Fine.
You sound great. We got you easily.
Okay.
Well, the only one echoing is me. Right, Matt?
You're the echo, yeah.
Do you want to hang up and call me again? Oh, wait.
Turn. I'm going to turn off my cell phone. See if that helps. Did that help?
So this is a simulation of a technological overwhelm, just to show you what can happen if the AI runs amok.
Okay, I think I already have identified the problem. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Now somebody else is echoing. Okay, let's carry on. So Elana has written a book called Under An Ionized Sky, and she writes about the deep state issues, including the stories of survivors of MK Ultra, ritual abuse, invasive electromagnetic weapons, and she's best known for Chemtrails, HAARP, and the full spectrum dominance of planet Earth. And she's written Under An Ionized Skies, From Chemtrails to Space Fence Lockdown. That's her latest book, February 2018. And Elana, go ahead and tell us about yourself. We're going to have you talk for about 15, 20 minutes, and then there's three of us here tonight. I'm Janet Careless, and Sasha spoke and said hi, and Kevin Estrella is here. And we're going to do a little round table and ask you questions, and you're going to teach us all about this stuff. You're a very prolific author, and so you have a number of books, so you're the expert. So first, let's say hi to everybody. Sasha, say hi everybody. Do a little sound check.
Yes. Hello. Yeah, can you hear me? Yes. I'm really eager to get the kind of analysis that you have to give us about Trump, because I've been reading this book about the death of democracies and how fragile it is, and I'm very concerned, and I know you've studied this in depth, and so I really want to hear your thoughts about that.
Oh,
okay. That's on our wish list for today, but we're going to just say hi to everybody first, and then we'll let you go free form, and then we'll get into the Q&A. But let's just put our little wish list on the table. Kevin, how are you? How's it where you are in Canada?
I'm doing awesome.
Is it cold, hot?
It's still kind of cold, yeah. But I'm heading to Ozark, Arkansas, on Thursday to the UFO conference. So I'm excited about that.
Oh, I'm jealous. I wanted to be there. Okay.
Are you all in Hawaii?
No.
I'm in Canada.
Canada?
Yes, Sasha and I are in Hawaii, and our producer, Mad Painter, is over in Kentucky right now. Where are you at? Georgia.
Yeah, the station's in Kentucky, though.
Right, the station's in Kentucky, so. And Elana, where are you calling in from?
I'm in Pacific Northwest, in Washington State.
Okay. Wow, we're all over the place here. Well, go ahead and start, and we will let you talk uninterrupted, and then we'll go freeform, round robin. Okay, so take it away.
You want me to give you an idea of my biography, like how I got into all this stuff, or where do you want to start? Yeah?
Yeah, how did you get started?
The best place to start is the most dramatic incident, and then from that, work into the story.
Okay. All right. So the most dramatic incident in my life that politicized me forever was when I was at Girls Nation in 1963, August, and I had spent the week, I and other girls, with Lyndon Baines Johnson, vice president then. He was in charge of my group of girls, and we then, just before we all left and returned to our home states, we had tea with John Kennedy in the Rose Garden, and he kind of picked me out as looking like his wife, just sort of making an innuendo for the press, probably. And then when I returned to my home state, I had to give a talk about my day with Kennedy, and then 4 months later, he was shot down in Dallas, and I had to return to the civic groups to give a talk again about my day with Kennedy, but this time the room was filled with sobbing people. So this was really the beginning of pretty much everything I've done since, other than maybe have children and raise them. But everything I've done in teaching, starting Waldorf schools, writing, has all been politicized. I was a member of the 60s generation. I was present at the burning of the Bank of America at UC Santa Barbara, and I saw that the FBI was the one that burned the bank down and not the student leaders who were subsequently sent to prison. I realized in the street riots in Berkeley that really all of this was tied to the assassinations of John Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and Robert Kennedy. And that was really the beginning of my quest for undoing the secrets. And I eventually did 10 years of research and wrote my Sub Rosa America series, which took 20 years to write, not because it was difficult, but because I was doing other things at the same time to earn money and bring forward my hope for humanity by giving children a good education and Waldorf schools, etc. So I finally finished the Sub Rosa America series. It's a fictional base, but really I chose a fictional base so I could comment throughout the books. There are 4 books in the series. And it's all about what has happened to this country since John Kennedy's assassination. So that's one side of me. Then the writer side of me, when I got back from England, when I was in England, I had done some editing for Adam Parfrey at Feral House. And when I got back and lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico for 5 years, this was after grad school, and I had gone to St. John's College there as well, I became friends with Clifford Carnicom. And he was the independent scientist in the late 90s who began the entire investigation into the trails in the skies. Those beautiful azure northern New Mexico skies were blighted by trails that Clifford immediately knew were not contrails, but were laden with chemicals, and his HEPA filter on his trailer was picking up fibers. So he began to investigate that with very makeshift microscopes and equipment, because he was no longer working for the Department of Defense or the Bureau of Land Management. So I met him through a friend, he and his wife, Carol, and we would all go to breakfast every few weeks, and Clifford and I would end up really deeply discussing what his research was uncovering. And he also took my blood sample and my saliva, and that was when I saw through his 300 power microscope that he had then that what was in the fibers that I had found in my mouth was also in my blood, and that the Morgellons creature, which he subsequently renamed the cross-domain bacteria, was sucking the iron out of my red blood cells. Well, this was definitely a wake-up call to me, because I pride myself in being a health nut since the 60s, no doctors, very healthy. And here I had more creatures in me. So when I got back to the Northwest, having moved from Santa Fe, Adam Parfrey contacted me and asked if I thought I could write a book on chemtrails. And so I did, and that took 2 years. It came out in 2014. Chemtrails, HAARP, and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth. And then from that book, and being on Coast to Coast after the book came out, I then met Billy Hayes, who is known as the HAARP Man. And Billy became a fan and an advisor, because Billy had climbed up over 240 tower installations working for defense contractors who in turn were contracted to a 3-letter agency whose name will remain nameless. And Billy basically belonged to that agency since he was 8 years old. He was an MK Ultra survivor and had been programmed in electromagnetics. So Billy became my advisor, because he was pointing at what all of the chemical trails and the ionospheric heaters and all the things I had written about in the first book, he said, that's just a preamble to what's coming. And what was coming was the space fence, to resurrect the space fence. It had been running in a very minimal way back in the Reagan, Cheney, Bush era in the 80s, and it was then called the Strategic Defense Initiative and the Star Wars program. And the only real space fence that we had was a chain of radar installations across the southern Midwestern states, all the way across. So what was happening was, now that the chemical trails and the ionospheric heaters like HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project in Gakona, Alaska, now that they had ionized the atmosphere and basically made it battery ready, antenna-like, electrified 24/7. And that's why the trails are always flying and why everything is always going on to keep it ionized, including weather, extreme weather events. Then they were able to really do the space fence the way they'd wanted to back in the 80s, but hadn't had the ionized atmosphere. Now they could really cook, literally. And the building of the Kwajalein Atoll installation in the Marshall Islands was really under Lockheed Martin. I mean, Lockheed Martin runs the space fence. Raytheon has owned the patents for HAARP and runs that program. Basically, these two top 10 defense contractors are pretty much a synonym for the CIA. So we're all subject now to a massive surveillance instrument that has a huge infrastructure on the ground level and in near-Earth orbit. So that's what the Under An Ionized Sky book does, is it basically spells out how we are wired and plugged in to a massive instrument that has been set up very quietly, each thing looking to be individual, when really it is the smart grid. This is the huge smart grid. And we are now plugged in. And, I try to tell people what this foretells for the future generations, because in my mind, the deeper into this I go, it's quite the rabbit hole. The deeper I go, I realize this is all about a transhumanist future. This is about cyborgs, not human beings. This is about a complete empire of planet Earth and near-Earth orbit, and eventually, if they have their way with this space age, this militarized space age that they've created, then it will be the entire solar system. And the reason that I have that illustration on the cover, which is basically making planet Earth look like Saturn in that there's a ring around it, is Billy Hayes was very clear that these rocket launches that are going up and spewing behind them masses of nanoparticles of aluminum, barium, strontium, titanium, lithium, that these particles do end up in the above the Earth and get caught up in the spin of the Earth and eventually settle around the equator in a ring very much like Saturn. And when I asked him early on, well, what is this ring going to do? I mean, it's full of conductive nanoparticle metals. So it's got to have to do with what? Communication with the ground setup for the space fence? Yes, it is. He said, if I were to think of a metaphor for it, that ring, I would say it was a CD-ROM. and it will hold all the memories of everything on Earth, and it will eventually be used for communications with other planets as we head out into the solar system. So to me, this is the inevitability that they have in mind. But meanwhile, they're really concentrating on control, full spectrum dominance over planet Earth. And by full spectrum dominance, it's a military doctrine. I didn't think the term up. That means full spectrum dominance of the electromagnetic spectrum. And given that you and I and all the other 6-7 billion human beings on planet Earth are resonant beings, to run an empire by plugging us all into a device, basically a machine run by AI, and then using pulsing of frequencies to control us through the heavy metals, the nanoparticles that we've breathed in and we're breathing in every day, with no permission given, no human consent. These particles that we're breathing in, along with the nanosensors like MEMS, GEMS, and NEMS, and the microprocessors that we're breathing in, teeny weeny little computers that are transceivers sending information, receiving information. We are basically matrices ourselves that can communicate.
It already happened. It already happened.
Yes.
They already got us. Is
yes.
that what you're saying? It's already.
Yes.
Wow.
It's not in the future. It's already done, and it's continuing to be done. And now I've shifted my emphasis, certainly in radio shows and in my writing, because I've started the third book in the series, and that's on synthetic biology. I'm trying to figure out, what do we do now? Because, initially when Trump came into office, because it had been such that really everyone thought Hillary would win, and then Trump came in, sort of like when Kennedy came in. Not to compare the two at all on a real level, but it was unexpected. I wondered what he was going to be like, and was he going to be briefed on this sort of apotheosis of the SDI program, or was he going to be given disinformation and misinformation that we need this, this is all about American defense, rah rah rah, and he wouldn't know about the rest. And even if he was properly briefed, would he be one of the guys in the white hats or the black hats regarding what is going on really with this program? So far, and I could be missing something big time, so far I have not made a decision on that. I personally do not think that he has been briefed properly on a lot of things, and that he's still caught in a mess of what, is called the deep state, or called, draining the swamp or whatever. I don't pay that much attention to it really, because I'm so concentrated on this. I'm trying to find ways to give people a big picture. Yes, it's a big mouthful. It's not pleasant to realize our condition with these nanoparticles. On the other hand, we need to know our conditions so that we can take care of ourselves, our children, our grandchildren, and our communities. So that's what I'm concentrating on now that I had no idea. I had no idea when I wrote Chemtrails HAARP that it was this bad. I knew the Morgellons was bad because Clifford had already convinced me. But I had not put the nanoparticles context in a proper a picture for myself. And that's kind of how I write, is I take in a tremendous amount of information, I let it all settle, And then I slowly begin to see how the parts all fit together. And I think if you do read Under an Ionized Sky, you'll see that this book goes much further than the first one.
Wow. So we're all doomed.
I'm just filled with good news, right?
Well, I've been interviewing all the secret space program super soldiers the last couple of weeks. And Trump, I think he's in on it. I don't think it's about being briefed or not. I think he's part of it. And I get that on a very gut, instinctual, psychic level. When I get these hits like that, it's like I'm fusing right on, and I hope I'm wrong, but I think it's like you said, it's these heads of the world are all maybe bored or taken over. But so it starts that they're like the puppets, and they're the enforcers, and the manipulators and propaganda people that are telling us just what we need to hear for their agenda. Go ahead. Somebody else wants to talk. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to say, when I analyzed this, I was really much impressed by this book, How Democracies Die by Levitsky and Ziblatt. And they say that, and they analyze all these actual cases, and it comes down to that what held our country together when all the dictatorships took over every place else was this commitment, the customs that we had of not treating the other party as though they're the enemy, not encouraging violence and all that stuff. But it was all based on a compromise between the Northerners and the Southerners to let the Southerners really disenfranchise black people. So now as we move to full to commitment to real democracy, then this is what's getting stirred. And when they look at Trump, they say, does he have a weak commitment to the democratic rules of the game? Does he deny the legitimacy of the political opponents? Does he see them as enemy? Does he tolerate or encourage violence? And is he ready to curtail civil liberties of opponents, including the media? And all those things mean what we thought was democracy is even that part is being way threatened, because it isn't all just a matter of law and constitution. It's a matter of not so much separation that you can't work it out with other. Could you relate to that, please?
Well, I haven't thought we had a democracy since the 60s. We haven't had one. We're run by the military-industrial intelligence complex. Anything democratic has been used and abused by the Operation Mockingbird mainstream media and the COINTELPRO forces that hold us in a vice grip, just make it feel kind of comfy and kind of convenient because we have all this cool, fun technology now. That is really military technology. Everything that we've gotten has been from the military, the radio, the television, the computer, these phones. I don't own one because it's like carrying your own weapon around with you. I personally, I have not seen anything democratic. Now, as far as the republic, we did kind of have a republic as long as the Constitution was being fought over. But gosh, now with this technology, I don't see that we have a First Amendment or a Fourth Amendment for sure. I don't know. Am I missing something?
I agree.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
I'm a realist. I'm not really interested.
Yeah, the real government is something really, really different than the benign myth that we're supposed to buy, that we have a democracy. But what they're saying is even that can't be sustained, and that we're moving toward the possibility of a naked Mussolini type dictatorship with a provocation either of a natural disaster or a 911 put up like the Twin Towers in order to curtail, have state of emergency or even military rules. So that basically it's getting nakeder and nakeder, is what these guys are saying.
Yeah, but we had it way before Trump. I mean, Trump is a business tycoon. Those are the people who elected him. I haven't seen a real president since Kennedy. They've all worked for the same bunch of thieves and criminals and pedophiles. I guess the way I work is I'm issue oriented, I suppose, and to me this is global. The thing I'm concentrating on now. This is not about just America. This is global, and this is serious about the future of humanity. And I am not one of those naysayers that thinks humanity is not worth the trouble and the earth would be better off without us. I am not that at all. I feel that we and our planet are connected. And I don't care how many evil, bad dudes come through the door around me in any generation. I have a job to do. And, I got a lot of feedback when I was quite emotional at one of the talks I gave. And I said, this is my watch. This is my watch.
Right.
And I'm on it. And I will do what I need to do to contribute what I can. And then I'm out of here. I mean, that's the way it is for all of us, isn't it? So I am concentrating on the global.
Not. What Penny Bradley was saying, that death there's no escape. There's no escape. She was part of the secret. They would kill them intentionally, and they'd stick them in a vat, and they wake them up next day and go back to work as military slaves. And so there's several million of them are being conscripted, and then their mind wiped to return to their lives until they're needed again, and then they're back on Mars or so if this is indeed true, which it seems to be overwhelming with all these people coming out and they're waking each other up. Who's doing this chemtrailing? What species? Is it like Solar Warden? Who's doing this?
I can't go there.
Over the planet.
I can't go there because I can't prove it. I'm a data freak. I mean, I have probably over 1,000 footnotes in this latest book. It's embarrassing. But I want people to have plenty of stuff to look at because I assume there's somebody out there who's going to see more than I do. And I want them to have some antecedents that they can go to and look. I'm not saying that there isn't the possibility of off-planet or certainly hyperdimensional beings that can take over human beings, move right in once you've sold your soul to whatever the devil is in your life, whether it's rock and roll, like Robert Johnson said he sold his soul to the devil, or if it's politics or pedophilia and Satanists, whatever it is, there are things that can move into and overtake a human being. I completely understand that, but I can't necessarily go there. I see that I'm pretty much a small expert on MK Ultra because I spent years on that to understand the mind control piece of this of what now is a much bigger picture for me of how it's going to be done. But the MK Ultra, I mean, we're talking thousands and thousands of victims of MK Ultra alone, and then we get to EMK Ultra, which is what I call it, ever since they've made it remote and electromagnetic. So now we have EMK Ultra, thousands and thousands of victims, and then we have targeted individuals, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of victims, as they test their latest equipment on them. So we have enough, in my mind, to do with on the human level that I can't really postulate beyond that. I don't think that's my job. I think my job is to go as far as I can on the human scale of how the evil and how nefarious self-interested humanity can be. And now in comes this new piece, which is electromagnetic. And now we're into something which very much could be non-human, such as AI. such as supercomputers, such as nanotechnology. Even the nanotech experts say they really don't understand what nanotech is because it's not natural. It's not from nature. So yes, we have technologies now that are going to take us into realms that are beyond what was once called by occultists, beyond the threshold, where we were protected from hyperdimensional universes, entities, whatever. Yes, we are on our way through that. And I think in the synthetic biology book, you're going to see where I'm really stepping out there, because I don't know if you remember from our last time in 2016, but I am a student of Rudolf Steiner. So I'm no rookie when it comes to the occult. I've spent 35, 45 years studying Steiner. So I'm going there. I'm going into esoterics, just like I did in this last book. I've got a whole chapter on ether, plasma, and scalar technology. Now, these are all beyond the threshold things. And so we have to bring that back. We have to take metaphysics on the one hand and physics on the other hand, through maybe quantum physics, which has sort of opened the door for the merging and the intertwining of these, so that we understand our condition all the way down to our subtle bodies. Mm-hmm. Now, hey, I'm comfortable in that area. But once we start importing aliens and blaming them for everything, I'm out. Can't do it.
Oh yeah, but Elana, go back to data, if you would, to HAARP, because I know you know stuff about HAARP. Did the HAARP guys, whoever they were, cause Fukushima?
Oh yeah. Wait, I'm going to take before we go. Okay, I just wanted to. You said a lot of stuff, and I want to unpack it a little bit. So, what was your question? Fukushima. Okay, yeah. Let's kind of. Finish one thing and then go on to another thing, because this is very, very important. All I'm saying is I'm getting a huge amount of testimonials. Testimonials do stand up in a court in court, right? And so we're looking at all these things. You're looking at MK Ultra people. I get a lot of those people. Maybe, like you said, nanotechnology, and then who created it? Who's the one that put this into effect? It didn't just come out of nowhere. There's someone that has his agenda.
No, I talk about it in the books. I tell you the names and everything. I mean, if you're again going to go into the alien side, I just can't go there. I think we can just put that aside. I've got a lot of information, but you don't need to talk me into anything, and I don't need to talk you into anything.
Well, I'm just looking at the whole picture, because I'm a researcher going back into history with my husband, who's an anthropologist, and we go back to the Anunnaki and the evidence there that there's been visitations, and then I'm an experiencer, so I personally have had experiences. So I'm looking at the whole picture because that's my life, just like yours is affected because of your critical incident. And I'm the same generation, and Sasha's 77. And Kevin's our baby here. How old are you, Kevin?
46.
46. So let's have Kevin interject something here, and then we'll go to what you said, Fukushima. Okay? Go ahead, Kevin. Ask a question. We don't want to leave you out.
Well, I'm really curious to understand more about this nanotechnology that's in the chemtrails. If you can explain a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's super important. And really, before I started writing Under An Ionized Sky and began to really look at nanotech, I had no idea that this really is possibly the biggest culprit of what's going to change us. So in chapter 3 is all about the nanotechnology revolution. And I go into everything I can find about how it came about, how these nanoparticles were created and moved into the public sphere with no decision making whatsoever in the government or anything. What is that noise?
Airplane.
Oh, an airplane. Where is it? Who's airplane?
It's not here.
Maui. It's in Maui, Janet. Turn your mic off.
Oh, we have a plane here. Okay. Oh, they must have changed direction because we normally don't hear them. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I was confused. So when in the chemical trails, everything is nano. Now, you know that we in the movement, in the anti-geoengineering movement, we still argue over, is it just from the jet fuel? Is what we're seeing the classified fuel formula? And it is classified by the military, and that includes commercial jets as well as military jets. You cannot get that formula of what they're using in these jets. Is it just what's happening in the combustion chamber? There's sort of a transmutation that goes on there, and it comes out oxidized. The aluminum, the barium, the strontium, the titanium, the lithium, all very conductive, all somehow needed in the jet fuel for efficiency, all the things that they need. Or is it a supplementary system that is on the jets? Many people have seen the pylons on the wings with the ducts. It's, you know what, I'm kind of an Eastern orientation, not a Western either or orientation. I say it's both and. So the important part is that those are all nanoscale. Now that's submicron. That is beyond tiny. You cannot see it with the naked eye. You cannot see it with most microscopes. You actually need an electron microscope, an electroscope, in order to see nano level. So these come down. First of all, they're usually laid in the stratosphere at the very top of our troposphere. And then slowly they will filter down, which is why they have to fly the jets every day, pretty much, to keep a lot of these nanoparticles in the air, because they're highly conductive. And you can move weather systems by having lots of particulates in the atmosphere. But more importantly, you can have lots and lots of wireless operations with all of this particulate in the air. So they make it small so it has loft, so that it comes down slowly. And as it's coming down, we're breathing it. There's no way around it. The aluminum oxide that is coming down is killing the trees in everywhere, because the soil is turning acidic, alkaline. The oceans are turning acidic. It's in our lungs. We take it in, can't see it, can't feel it. It goes into our lungs, and then those nanoparticles of metal then make their way through our bloodstream, into our organs, into our muscles, into our tissues, and eventually, into and past the blood-brain barrier. And they're in our brain. And that's why Alzheimer's has increased, autism has increased. I mean, not just increased a little, I mean like off the charts increased, because we are taking in all this metal. And this makes us even more conductive than we were before. Now we're really towers. Now we're really transceivers.
Here's a question one more question. How does fluoride fit into this? Isn't like fluoride's aluminum too?
Yes, and fluoride, what happens with the fluoride? That's in the water system, right? Do you have fluoride where you are?
Not where I am. I don't use fluoride toothpaste anymore, and
right, but all of this with fluoride, aluminum, mercury in the vaccinations, all of this acts, what's my favorite word now, synergistically. All of these pollutants are acting together. And they don't really, they being the military scientists or scientists who are pursuing under a compartmentalized need-to-know basis with minimal clearance, security clearance, pursuing their little particular task paid for by government money. They don't know what will happen with the synergy, and in whether it's in the sky or it's down here on Earth with our plants. We do know that Monsanto made aluminum-resistant seed before we really had full chemical trail infusion going on. So obviously they were in on it, and they got something ready. So now I think that they're watching people's health very closely. I think they're hacking into hospital records, clinic records, whatever, in order to see what is going on chemically and with the metals in the human body, because they don't really know. And the fluoride is certainly a part of it. Diseases now, from Lyme's disease to chronic fatigue. Chronic fatigue is not really a disease, it's a symptom of too much metal in the body. All the fibrosis, all these things are being misdiagnosed. I mean, you can't blame the physicians. They don't know anything. This is national security. This is all secret. And so
that brings me back to who can breathe this stuff? Who is immune to the stuff being put out there? They're not poisoning themselves.
Yeah, as far as the ones doing this, they must have the antidotes. Their families are going to be fine, would be my guess. They're building their mansions underground, and so I'm assuming they have a vaccination. They have pills. They certainly have state-of-the-art filters, air filters in their homes, water filters, etc. Why would they do this? I mean, let's talk about that. Why would they do this? They must have a very great dream that they want to bring to fold. And they must have in mind that someday they may not need this, that they are probably all frantically working to get to a point where they do not need to do this at the scale they're doing it. And it's a tremendous scale. We're all breathing masses of this stuff. So I'm thinking that they are pursuing technologies, one of which I know, because I've studied it, is plasma. They're making plasma, and I don't mean the plasma in your blood. I mean the fourth state of matter. They're making plasma in our atmosphere. They're having all kinds of things going on. They're making Birkeland currents. They're making Alvin waves. They're making all these things that were once considered cosmic and out of the purview of anthropomorphic ability. They're doing it now because the atmosphere is electrified all the time, and they can just treat the atmosphere as a lab. And they don't care if they kill off a bunch of us, do they? And meanwhile, disaster capitalism is making hay for the medical industry and big pharma, as we get sicker and sicker. I mean, these are the kinds of people, if we still call them people, psychopaths, I like to call them, who don't really care what the side effects are, and that includes their own families. Really, when you get down to it, they don't love their children like you do, like I do. They have I've known 3 very elite people from elite families, and they do not raise their children the way we do. These children do not watch television. These children do not eat crap food, GMOs. These children are treated specially, but they are also very, very abused because they are expected to handle the reins of power. And so you need dissociation when you have that kind of pressure on you that the lawyers alone can't handle. So it's a very different people. It's like almost from another planet, and they have a way in which they will sacrifice just about anything or anyone for their dream, and I do give them credit for that, because I deal with mostly just regular folks, and regular folks do not really pursue their dream very well. They are willing to kind of let things slide or take comfort and convenience over the price that it takes, the sacrifice it takes in order to really acquire a dream. I know very well what that means. I've sacrificed a great deal, and that was my choice. It's not that I'm looking for any praise. That's what it takes if you have a big dream. So their dream is very big, and they have a lot of minions, a lot of slaves, like you were saying. Right, a lot of people work for them. A lot of people are under terror and fear. A lot of people have been filmed with having sex with children, so those are completely controlled. So this is how they run their lives. And then they have a lot of fancy technology that I think is going to take care of them. I mean, every time I looked at that one, that one Rothschild, I think he's called Evelyn. Every time I looked at him, it was, my God, is he getting younger? What is he drinking? Children's blood? I mean,
there you go.
The adrenochrome in terrified children. Is that what these guys do? Yeah, I think so. I think that's exactly what they do. Mm-hmm. So I try not to think about them, and I try not to really give them much of my juice. I'm concentrating on our people, the real human beings. And so, that's, I don't know if I answered your question about it sufficiently about what's coming down, but the nanoparticles are very much what I would recommend that you really look into.
Yeah. So the nanoparticles, are we talking about like they're just metals, or are we talking about like something that's like a computer chip?
No, it's not a computer chip. It's there's nanoparticles in women's cosmetics. There's nanoparticles in any processed food that you will buy in a supermarket, like chips or something. All of our food supply has nanoparticles in it now, because they don't need to name it on the ingredients list. So anything refined, it's like a filler. It can be used as a filler. It's in our clothes. All the things that make this clothes smell nice in a department store, that's all nanoparticles. So where can I look where there aren't nanoparticles? Well, I'm not sure. I suppose I still maintain that eating organic food over GMOs is good. But on the other hand, these nanoparticles are everywhere. They're falling on us right now.
So what defines a nanoparticle? Is it a metallic particle?
It is atoms and molecules. And if you are asking, what you're asking me is what material they're made from. They can use a variety of materials to make them. They can use just periodic table elements to make them, because they're all on an atomic and molecular level. They're quite extraordinary.
If everything's grown outside, including organic food, then there's really no true organic food, because whatever's falling down from the sky goes into everything.
Yeah, I agree, and that is the key, isn't it? But it's at least still from real seed. It's not a genetically modified seed.
Right.
But I am recommending that people grow in covered areas. I don't mean full glass houses or anything, but to at least cover, particularly, the first hour of a rainfall, there's a mass of nanos coming down. And just to finish your question about the nanos, yes, then I did mention the sensors. Now the sensors, there have been articles in the newspaper that they've released trillions of sensors in the stratosphere. So there's a lot of those, the sensors, and they're in us. So those sensors are doing their job. They are sensing things. They probably are being communicated with in all of our cell towers and all of our cell phones around, and the 60 hertz in our walls, and the Internet of Things that's all around us. I would assume they're being communicated with, and maybe AI systems are picking up on data, because it isn't just social media that's vacuuming up data. It's these sensors. So they're in us.
Right.
They're in my brain. They're in everything. And
we're
then
coming up on the first break here. I just wanted to give a heads up. So it'll be about 1 minute. Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and then there's the microprocessors, which are the tiny computers. And those are in us as well. And they are certainly transceivers. And they are nanoscale. So it's quite an amazing feat to get all this in us, never enter a clinic, never enter a hospital, never go to a doctor, never see a scientist around. They don't need to get hold of us in any way. It can all be done remotely. And I'm sure they're feeling very good about this, because they really want full control over humanity.
Wow. Apparently they have it. Okay, well, we're going to be going on a break.
What I wonder is how is it that if they have full control over humanity, that the 5 of us right now are having this conversation and people are listening to us and responding to us? We're not being snuffed.
Yeah, let's cover that.
We'll be back after the commercial break. Yes. See you in 5.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Did you ever feel that things were not quite right? That everything was just ever so slightly askew?
Do you have, to paraphrase Morpheus, a splinter in your mind?
If you're interested in hearing the latest information about UFOs, the paranormal,
ancient cultures and structures,
monatomic elements,
longevity,
fantastic discoveries in science,
downloaded to your brain,
then tune into us. Hi, I'm Dave.
And I'm Mackie.
And we are Shiny Side Out, Sundays 2 to 4 a.m. Eastern. See you then.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Join me weekdays for my new show, Tell Chris Joe. It's going to be a problem show brought to you live from Kensington. Thursdays, I'm dealing with hot topics, heated debate, what's new around the world, and ring-ins to discuss listeners' problems and offering considered and heartfelt solutions. So join me, Chris Hart, for Tell Chris Joe. Stop what you're doing, grab a cup of tea, and coming live from Kensington. Relax, let me entertain you with a coffee bar online. Listeners' very personal problems. So that's Thursdays, 2 p.m. in the afternoon, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. See you there. It's going to be lots of fun.
Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or computer failure took out your bank, or all the banks for that matter. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it. I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? Well, squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drive to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Looking for a nightcap to fill your listening needs? Come join us on Spaced Out Radio with me, Dave Scott, right here on Revolution Radio. Monday through Friday for 3 hours a night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, we will take you down the supernatural path. From ET contact to the paranormal and all of the spiritual, cryptid, and conspiracy stories in between. You can find us right here on Revolution Radio, at spacedoutradio.com, on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show. Spaced Out Radio. It's a night of talk and interaction. Are you experienced?
Let us play with all our joys and let us think that we're... The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Oh, Kevin, you got to mute. I don't know if we're on or not. No, it's not.
Potato chips.
Sorry.
You're
Did I
crunching.
inspire you to have potato chips when I said they're filled with nanoparticles?
You're back.
Yes, I got to eat them right now. I don't know if we're live or not. I can't tell.
Yeah.
I don't know if the man...
Click it and y'all started talking. I couldn't do it, so you're live now.
Okay, we're back. You heard us being real people. We are real people.
Welcome back.
Welcome back to Stargate to the Cosmos. And I'm your host, Janet Kara Lessin, with co-host Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin, and Kevin Estrella, and producer Thomas Becker, and our wonderful guest, Elana Freeland, who's scaring the crap out of us, but we're okay. Before we get back to our show with more, we're gonna have some positive things at the end. That's what I always do. It's like we're gonna do all the yucky stuff, and then we'll come around with something. But before that, we have to do our little commercial break. We would like everybody, follow my hypnotic suggestion. Go over and make a donation to revolution.radio, that button on revolution.radio, and donate what you can. Even if you're listening to this in the archives, you're going to find yourself going to revolution.radio and clicking and making a donation so we can stay on the air. Because we are relying on your donations to stay alive. Bad Painter, where are we in the this whole cycle? How much more do we need to meet our goal?
We got 1297, and we need 2650, so that's 1353 to go yet this month. And we're doing pretty good. So, but we'd appreciate it if you go ahead and donate.
Right, it'd be better to end the month ahead. Okay, so before we bring Elana back, let's get the comment from each person. Sasha, what would you like to say?
I want to know what you think we're going to say about Fukushima and HAARP, please.
Okay, we can talk about that. And Kevin, what do you want to ask in this next hour or talk about?
Oh boy. I think a little bit more in regards to these other programs that are being used and tested, because a friend of mine, and she's been on this show before, who was inducted in 2004, or Solaris Blue Raven. She was attacked with artificial telepathy. And she was targeted for many years, and it nearly destroyed her life.
Yeah. Okay, so Elana, back to you. Where do you want to go right now? And so you got the request on the table. Take it away.
Right. Did you want to do that question that you had before the break, or do you want to wait for that one? Do you remember?
What was the question before the break? Now I don't remember.
That was Sasha.
Yeah,
Sasha, your question was.
The big question was, how is it that we have been selected and blessed and motivated and drawn to this mission of communicating, and our mission is being facilitated and people are listening, and I think somehow their heart chakras are opening, and it's not that there always has to be opposition and other, but there's the possibility of humanity becoming much kinder. That's what I think.
Okay, all right. So I'll return to that. Let's do the Fukushima first. Okay. I go into the Fukushima event in the Chemtrails, HAARP, and the full spectrum dominance of planet Earth. I go into Fukushima in that one. I go into Katrina in that one, Hurricane Katrina. I go into Hurricane Sandy, the Haitian hurricane, because in that book, I'm really primarily looking at weather. And as I said, weather is only one of the operations, certainly a very important one, admittedly, that this electrified, ionized atmosphere provides the matrix for military operations. And when I did the Fukushima, I looked at a few things I had found that were going on politically that indicated, one being, just to give you an example, of how the prime minister of Japan at that time was definitely listening to people who wanted the American base on Okinawa to be gone. Now, that is a very huge thing, given that since the end of World War II, when the Americans basically rewrote Japan's constitution, and that Japan has been sort of like America in the East for us. When it was obvious that there was going to be a political move to make Americans leave Okinawa, that's when the Fukushima event happened. So I did see a correlation between the two, that it wasn't just because it was, again, in Sub Rosa America, I studied the Freemasons big time. And I am very much involved in looking into their symbolic language, their numerology, the way they talk to each other in media, in mainstream media articles about some of their after false flag events, after youthful shooters shoot things up. I know their language. I've spent years studying it. So and I saw that language in the Fukushima event, in that there were 3 events. I don't know if you remember that. There were 3 earthquakes, basically. And the third, of course, was the one that toppled the Daiichi nuclear plant and made this terrible, terrible mess for Japan and for the ocean and the planet, etc. So yes, that was very much HAARP. HAARP is the only one, but remember, HAARP had tremendous power. That was really what made it different. It is only one of now hundreds of ionospheric heaters around the planet. HAARP is just one, but it still has tremendous power. And it was shut down in 2013. I don't know if you remember. In 2014, they had I think it was an Alaskan Senate meeting in which one of the Air Force guys admitted that HAARP had been successful, and now we're going to pass it over to the University of Alaska at Fairbanks. It was successful because now we control the ionosphere. And he just absolutely said it. So that is true. And now, bingo, HAARP has been brought online again. And after the winter we just had, in which I saw many weather events, extreme weather events, particularly ice events that were being created anthropogenically by all the technology that can move, build, feed, steer weather systems. I wonder if they're bringing HAARP back online because they're making war preparations regarding Iran and saber rattling. Whether or not it comes to pass, one can only hope that it won't. But to bring HAARP back online, two world leaders, such as in Iran, because Iran is the home of the great physicist Keshe, Keshe.
Keshe.
He is a great physicist. I'm sure that these world leaders know what it means that HAARP is brought back online. But you can't, because this is all scalar technology that is all Tesla stuff, the HAARP would be only one of the instruments that would have been used at Fukushima. There had to be another one, and possibly yet another one, 3, because when you're doing interferometry, which is what it takes, over a target area, you're going to interfere 3 beams or 2 beams over a target area. Then you can really juice it and decimate it, that I don't know which other one would have been used. Possibly one in Russia. Possibly one in India. I don't know, but I was never clear on that, of what other instrument would have been used with HAARP, but I was very clear that 3 days in advance of Fukushima, they fired HAARP up, and that was when you could still go to a certain site and do the reading for what level HAARP was running at. That disappeared, and I don't know that it'll ever return. So anyway, that's on Fukushima. Was that enough?
That was
Bosh,
wonderful.
Are you satisfied?
I'm really satisfied. I was so interested in it. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah.
And then of course the other thing about Katrina and all that stuff, and the drowning and murder and kidnapping. From our perspective, the kidnapping of a lot of the homeless black people and taking to the German slave camps on other planets. I know you don't dig that stuff because there's no evidence, but anyway, that's the stories we've been getting.
But a lot of black people were, of course. I mean, to me, Katrina was. Here's how I looked at it. Katrina and Sandy were very similar. You remember Sandy was on the New York coast, right? You remember that?
Yes, I remember.
Sandy? Okay. So they're very similar because both of those were international ports. You had the Mississippi River port at New Orleans, and then you had the ports of New Jersey and New York up where Sandy was. And my theory was that they wanted to redo these ports, and they wanted all the poor out of there. And so they ran these hurricanes, because that's the way disaster capitalism is. And that is fully functional. It is all disaster capitalists now. And they're making a fortune off of weather derivatives and bringing Halliburton in to rebuild, and moving people into FEMA camps and trailers, and the trailer business is booming. So when they did Katrina, that's what happened. Is approximately 35,000 was the last figure I remember. Poor people living down in the port area were all moved out, and as you were saying, I don't know about off planet, but I do know that almost none of them returned, and their property was sold for a song, and virtually they've disappeared. They're gone. Nobody knows where they are either. I did meet a black woman and 2 children in Austin, Texas. I was visiting my daughter there, and they were in the neighborhood, and they had come from New Orleans after Katrina. And so I listened to that lady very carefully about her property and how she was hoping that they could go home. And it was very early on. So, and I knew already that she would never go home. I knew that. And the same thing they did with Sandy. The only thing that was different with Sandy, which was very interesting, is they parked a hurricane off coast on the same latitude as the target area. They had a hurricane parked, and I believe they were using that hurricane to feed that storm system. And that you need to, do a little more study in the Chemtrails HAARP book to understand how that is done. Mm-hmm. But recently, remember when we saw 5 hurricanes parked off the Atlantic coast? Remember? That was just a few months ago. And to do that, they did fire HAARP up for that, because to park 5 hurricane systems takes a lot of energy. And so all of these for the last 2 decades are all, in my mind, experimental. This is all them learning how to control weather systems for, yes, weather and perhaps food, but mainly for weaponizing, mainly as threat, so that they can bring a drought where they want it. They can bring floods where the disaster capitalists need it. This is the American way, is to weaponize everything. And that also is part of full spectrum dominance.
Does Mr. Putin have similar technology?
Wait, I have a question. Can I ask mine and go to yours? We live across from Haleakala, and they have some HAARP installation up there. They have something. It fires up. I see it all the time.
Yeah, you got a telescope up there. HAARP. Yeah.
Right, but there's something else that they fire up, and it beams. I've seen it beam. Or something. Something's coming from it.
Probably a laser. I think it's a laser installation up on Haleakala, right?
Yeah, what is that about? What do you know about that?
It's a laser. It's a laser. It's part of the HAARP array that they fire in a sequence to cause a toroid that bounces at a right angle off the ionosphere at the target.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. And they can use the laser system for target areas in interferometry as well, for weaponing. Yeah.
Right. So anyway, we're right across from one of them. I've seen their beam. And I've seen them fired up, and they do it somewhere around between 4 and 5. But they must be covering things, because we've had like 3 or 4 weeks of rain, so you can't see anything. So you say they might be firing up from war with Iran. What makes you identify where they're going to be?
Well, it's only that's where the saber rattling is going on now, is with Iran, because Iran is it just is not playing ball, and it's Syria has pretty much been worn out. I mean, it's disgusting. It's all absolutely disgusting, and Iran is. And this, you will be interested in this, and you've probably already known about it. But I think that certainly I watched closely when we went into it's not Babylon. What's the name of Baghdad? When we went into Baghdad, and I saw them big media event that they had the entire museum had been desecrated and there was a lot of theft.
Right.
Blah, blah. That was the cover story. They had gone in and gotten all these ancient artifacts. No question about it. That was a big priority for the assault on Baghdad and Iraq in general. And now they're in Syria. And that, I'm sure it's a huge part of why they are collecting the artifacts, the ancient artifacts of the past, because all these sciences that they are dedicated to, they have lived before. We've had these sciences. You know about Atlantis.
Right.
We've had these sciences before, and we've made big mistakes, right? The poles have shifted and all sorts of things, and I do believe that they are not necessarily cosmically caused. I think they're caused by human beings in the sandbox here, toiling away at their latest little dreams and nightmares. So possibly with which was Persia, that's part of it as well. I mean, the Persian Empire, can you get much greater than that?
So listen, I wanted to tell you about, from the old Sumerian stuff, they talk about this genius Adapa who is able to master their scientists' machinery to change the direction of the wind so that it would take his sails where he wanted to go. So there's all this ancient, there it is, it's already written in cuneiform, exactly what you're saying. They had it.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm in no doubt. In fact, my Sub Rosa America series depends upon the idea that it's, we're involved in Atlantis come again. And, there are many of us Atlanteans who are attempting to prevent that in whatever way we can. So now what was, Kevin, what was your question? I can't remember.
Actually, I had a different question. Because remember last summer all the fires that took place in California?
Oh yeah.
Can you tell me about what was going on with that?
I was very involved in that because I think it all started. I think this is what happened. I was on a radio show with Anthony Patch, who is sort of my go-to CERN guy, and Kev Becker out of Scotland, and they were querying me about a couple of things I had said online, which about the Santa Rosa fire. The one thing I had said was that I had seen some drone footage of the Santa Rosa fire, and very, very careful, very low, and so you could see all the detail. And as I saw that the trees were still standing, but everything else was pretty much dustified, pretty much like gone. I was reminded of the very great study of 9/11 done by Dr. Wood, Judy Wood, which is Where Did the Towers Go? Because in there, she has, if you haven't seen that book, you really should get it. It is amazing. She has, must be 1,000 photographs in there with captions, really good captions, and text. And she talks about how the firemen wading through the debris at 9/11 were shocked by the fact that even steel beams had been brought down in seconds and were completely dustified. Now there's only one thing that can do that, and that's a directed energy weapon. And Judy Wood knew that. But she would never say it was that HAARP was involved. At that time, there was not that much out on HAARP that, she would have been satisfied was scientific enough. But she did say it was a directed energy weapon. All right, so that was one thing, the drone footage. She had also said, there was an eyewitness also that I had read her testimony, who was there in Santa Rosa as it was happening. And what she had said was that there had been this terrible, strange wind that had come up, and that it was hot, but it was almost alive. Now, I had seen that too in Judy's book, about the wind that comes from the disintegration of matter, of molecular matter, because that's what happened. And regarding the tree being standing and not burning at all, maybe a little scorched, but still standing, still the roots intact. That was like what Judy Wood had said about finding pieces of paper from the offices at the towers 7 miles away, just fine, not burned at all. Now that's very much a directed energy weapon that is looking for certain electronic signatures of matter, and is maybe with an algorithm directed to those particular signatures and leaving organic signatures alone. So I had said that on that radio show, and that was probably, I think I was the first person to say that I thought it was a directed energy weapon that produced that fire. And then it just went crazy. Everybody was saying it was a directed energy weapon. Everybody was saying it was a laser coming from the sky. There was some footage of a blue beam coming down from the sky, which could very well have been a laser on a jet, or a military jet, or on a satellite. But it was definitely not your normal fire. Then they had the Ventura fire not long after. But that was a very different beast. That was not at all like Santa Rosa. Santa Rosa was a real sculpting event. Some houses were hit, some weren't. For a while, we thought it was just because some of those houses had smart meters, and some didn't. And the smart meter would have been sort of like a guide dog, like, come on over here. This is, hit this. Uh-huh. But in the end, I wasn't so clear on that, because I would have needed to do a lot of research on that. But during that time, after I was on that radio show, I was contacted by a Portuguese woman, and Portugal had had a fire right around the same time, October 15, 2017. And that fire, too, behaved strangely. So this Portuguese woman said that Portugal had, unlike our government, which, only thinks to cover things up, that Portugal had formed a commission that wanted to investigate it. Now, it could have been a cover-up anyway. It could have been, okay, let's look at all the data and then let's bury it. Or it could have been, what the heck? Who is this? Is this those Americans again coming over here and doing stuff? So I got together with a guy, and he had a lot of data. He was from Santa Rosa. He had seen a lot. And I sent 20-some pages to her of text and recommended videos and quotes. And I mean, I worked for like 3 weeks on that because we had the attention of a government, and she wanted to compare what had happened in Portugal with what had happened in Santa Rosa. Now, that is still in process, and apparently it's gone very well in Portugal, because Americans are really hated over there. And so they want to sort of nail this. And do I think Americans did their fair? I have no idea. But NATO is very possible, because this is a NATO program. Europe, the EU and Britain and the US and Canada and all the echelon countries, they're all behind this, doing this stuff. But that was the first time that I had paid attention to fires. I certainly had been watching them, and I certainly had thought, wow, that's really near a military base. I wonder if the military is wanting to expand its territory. That's about as far as I had gotten. It had not occurred to me that they would use it for disaster capitalism, which is what's happening in Santa Rosa. Now they're moving it toward Agenda 21. And they're, people have had to move out of their homes, and those homes have sold much cheaper than they would have otherwise. So it is being used, the fire thing seems to be being used, along with the weather thing, for Agenda 21 or 2030 futuristic control over community level.
Oh, wow. So,
suburban reconstruction. Wow.
Suburban relocating people, set the place on fire, you move out, you can't move back.
Yeah.
They sell it and do it. Wow.
So
this is the first time. This was the first time.
What was going on in a parallel time that would make the military want to punish Portugal or NATO hit Portugal in that particular way? You talked about how that happened for Fukushima and it made sense. Is there any parallel thing that was going on in the world that would make that make sense? The fire there in Portugal?
No, I do not follow Spain and Portugal that closely. I know there's tension between the two, but it seems to me that Spain and Portugal are both anti-NATO, anti-US, and if perchance they have not played ball with the NATO boys or the EU, which of course is a complete crock, then they'll get hit. That's what happened. That's what happens with smaller countries who displease the people in charge of these programs, is they get hit. I'm remembering now, what was the name of that country? It was, I've seen it happen several times, so that would be my guess, but I haven't been able to determine that.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, but the one thing I was going to add is that the Santa Rosa fire and the Ventura fire was the first time that the rich have been hit. That was important, I thought. Before, with Katrina and Sandy, it was the poor. This was the rich. So in a way, it was saying this was the time when the Pizzagate thing was happening. And the pedophiles were on the run in LA and Hollywood. And it seemed that it might have even been a message like, hey, even being rich isn't going to protect you from this. I don't know, but it did cross my mind.
Unless you invested in insurance stock.
Insurance is making a off of all this.
Right.
Wow.
Is there any hope?
Well, hope. What do you mean hope? I mean, I'm not depressed. I'm very happy. I like to know my situation. I don't want to hide things. I want to know so that I can gird up my loins and take care of myself and to help the people around me. And so I'm tickled pink that I'm understanding, because I think every era we've incarnated into this era, I think every era we've incarnated into has its problems. I mean, think if we lived in the 1400s with the Inquisition. Every era has something, and this is ours. Here it is. And I love science. I mean, I've always been a friend of science, but I have never been as deep into it as I am now. I mean, I'm reading books on plasma physics, and I'm working my butt off on this because everything's breaking news. Everything, even every radio show, I'm probably going to have something new to say because I'm pursuing this with such a vengeance. Because I'm really ticked off. I'm very ticked off about this, and I've been ticked off since Kennedy's assassination. And I've just sort of changed my focus now is on NASA, the CIA, of course, always the CIA, all the military contractors. I'm thinking of all these targeted individuals who are contacting me with these terrible stories, and it's a very irritating. Evil is very irritating to me.
It's obvious we're being run by criminals who murder and kill children and finance all kinds of terrible things all over the place, and everybody knows it.
Yeah, and
it's still happening.
But the difference is that really more and more people are waking up now. This is, we've slept through thousands of years. We, the peasants, we the lower classes, we the manipulated, we've slept through it, and we've taken our comforts in a variety of things, but we've never really, as a species, we've never really grokked. Remember that great word, grokked?
I love that word,
really grokked these elites that dominate everything, every era. We've accepted it like we did the weather before, but now I find people are really getting quite irate over this and being so mistreated. And not to say we're going to be able to have a big revolution and overturn them in a few weeks or even a few years. No, this is a process. I look at, I don't know if you do, but I look at my evolution. Like, I'm getting ready for my next life right now. I know where I'm going, and I know what I'm taking with me, and that's another reason I work so hard, is I understand that process. How do I understand that? Am I particularly gifted? Not really. I simply have been paying attention to how this incarnation thing works, and I just plan to really do some stuff next time about this, because this will not fly forever. This domination by the global elite, the dynastic families, the whatever terrible thing has happened to them, to make them subhuman. No, this is going to change.
Mm-hmm. Underneath this, the problem that runs through all of it is dominator consciousness, which stifles, makes everybody get into a one-upsmanship and stifles those who aren't on top. And so it's partnership and synergy. Is it possible to make peace with the elites in a way that honors them and honors us? Do we always have to be opposed?
Well, you'll have to ask someone else that question, because I'm not there yet. I'm not in a forgiving mood. And truthfully, that sort of egoism, I run into it in the anti-geoengineering movement all the time. I mean, it's just something that is, in my mind, in most people, it's when they're particularly unconscious and really have a very narrow picture of what's going on in the world and what their role is. Very narrow. I tend to be I'm very big-minded. I've trained myself to be, but in a way, maybe I've always been that way. And everybody is on the ship for me. And I'm a team player. But you turn against me, you do something that indicates you are not a team player. Well, then, I'm a warrior. I'm definitely a warrior. I'm not a peacemaker under false pretensions. No way. Nope. You got to come and say, I'm different now. Forgive me. Let's go on. And then I'm all for it. But otherwise, no. I can hold my own.
No, that's it. I think you've got the beautiful key. Come clean and let's go on from here. That's your solution. I dig it. Yeah. Kevin, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say there's a huge awakening that's going on right now on the planet, and people are finally starting to see changes, and there's going to be massive changes between now and 2021, and the veils are all coming down. Particularly, from all the information that I've been working with. There's an official first contact that's taking place in 2021, where 32 star nations involved are making their appearance, and no one will be able to deny it anymore. So there's a lot of awakening that's going on. Even these these changes in the quantum matrices of this Mandela effect that's going on. Large portion of the population are awakened to these changes in the quantum field, where something that they knew before in the past has now changed. Others are already living in in this new timeline, this new universe, this parallel universe. My brother has different memories than I do from the past, even though we experience the same things. So there's a huge awakening happening in multiple different ways, and I think the walls are going to be coming down big time.
Yeah. Well, I am committed to that. Maybe not in the same time frame, but I know that that this pushing that I'm doing is certainly having an effect, and that I am with thousands of others who also feel that same impulse to keep pushing. The one thing, see, I started 4 Waldorf schools, and I learned a lot in doing that. I know how to push. I know how to, what I call, beat the bushes. You just keep going. You do not let up. You do not wait for some magical sign. However, a sign will come to let you know, okay, that's enough. You've done your job. You can go on to your next mission. Because that's what happened to me in Waldorf. Is finally, after 16 years and starting 4 schools and teaching and doing all the conflict resolution and all the stuff it takes to start schools, I was walking across my living room one day, and suddenly that magical little voice that I know so well said, "Well done, you're done. You can do something else now." And I immediately obeyed and knew that, yes, I am done with the Waldorf movement. I will now move on to the next thing. And that's kind of how I see this, is I'm pushing. I'll push through one more book. And then I really pray to the spiritual world, please, please give me a private life back so I can write some other things. So I can do some other things. But if it doesn't come, if the voice doesn't say yes, I'll keep going. I'm a worthy servant here, and I get it. I get how to do this, and I'm giving it everything I've got. And people seem to be noticing that that's true. I've gotten rave reviews of the book. Catherine Austin Fitz, in particular, she's someone I admire greatly. She's an investment analyst. She has praised it to the skies. So I will try to do just as well in the next one. The next one will be harder for me because there's so much detail. But I want people to know and have an idea of what it means to have all this equipment inside our bodies, inside our bloodstreams, inside our brain, and how we can meet that. Because when we were talking about, and you mentioned, Kevin, you mentioned Raven.
Solaris Blue Raven.
Yes, I know her. And regarding targeting, I know a lot of I know probably a dozen targeted individuals I'm in touch with. And I do believe that consciousness, and I would have to spend some time defining what I mean by that, because it's one of those words that has sort of lost its meaning, or maybe gained too many meanings. And consciousness is a huge force that I completely depend on. And have great confidence in, and I know that with targeted individuals, that is the key for them. Not that I can end their torture, but that if they can retain their consciousness and live for that higher self that they are, they can handle it. And that is, the most comfort I can give them, because I have never known a targeted individual yet. Maybe you have, Kevin, who has been able to, who was finally let go. I've not known one.
Yeah, Solaris is still, she's still somewhat plugged in. Nothing like she was before, but she's still very aware.
Well, and they do move people to the back burner. That's about the best I can say. I have gotten hit a few times, and I have interpreted it as sort of reminders of that I'm stepping out of line, beyond what somebody wants me to, or whatever. But I don't worry about it because I actually feel that by informing humanity or whoever cares to listen to me about this technology, that I am giving them a chance to survive it and to even thrive under it if they are willing to start looking around for ways to detox, for lifestyle changes that will not feed into this being plugged in so much, etc. I do feel that one thing I know about the elites is that they do admire people who fight back and are not a big name in the mainstream media. That's the other caveat. To become a big name means you'll get way too much attention. But me, I'm a fringe writer. I'm just over here on the fringe, writing the best I know how of how this technology works and what their intentions are. And it appears to me
who's directing the target? Who's aiming this thing? What consciousness is directing? They target. Okay, so let's say you're a target, right? And the control program's coming at you, saying, I'm controlling you. Okay, what's directing this at you, and how come you're selected?
Well, the how come you're selected is really something that no targeted individual should spend too much time on, because there are a variety of intentions that they are pursuing. One of which is so mundane, it's disgusting, which is to train other agents. They'll just pick somebody up out and they'll just be the guinea pig by which an agent can be trained in torture. But others, it may be genetic bloodline. It may be you've become a problem to a big CEO of some corporation and he puts the hit out on you. I mean, there are so many reasons for that, but there's always some contracts are sold. Like I know an MK Ultra who's no longer useful as an assassin, and so her contract is sold to the highest bidder they can find, who just like to torture her. There are so many of these. I mean, and how many people am I talking about? I'm talking about hundreds of thousands, if not 1.5 million in America alone. And when I lived in England, I was contacted by several of these people, and they have a huge problem there of targeting. This is millions of people are being targeted for a variety of reasons. Testing equipment, seeing how much you can take, because they want to use this in the war that is life now. They're redefining life as war. Are they doing this to Assad in Syria? I'm sure they're trying to. Are they able to do it to Trump? I'm sure that they're trying to. Somebody's trying to, but I know he's aware of this technology. So he's had the entire White House debugged. His wife wouldn't move in until it was debugged. So this is the way it's played now. This is politics now. Is this targeting technology? And I wrote an article in Nexus magazine years ago about this political control technology, which now is even more sophisticated.
Wow. Go ahead, Kevin.
It's so sick.
It's so sick.
It's disgusting.
It's like the Nazi that makes the Nazis look like they were fumbling idiots. They had camps. Now the incarceration happens in your own home, in your own workplace, while you're walking down the street. Yeah, and it's so cowardly, isn't it, Kevin? So cowardly.
Yeah.
I mean, how could you ever
to control people at their very level,
Yeah, I mean, the sexual aspect. You have no privacy anymore. They watch everything. Yeah, through your eyes even. They have devices. And those are on a nano scale. They can hit you with all sorts of technology that's now nano. They can just, send it on a beam, on a laser beam, and insert it into your body, and all you'll feel is a pinprick.
And that could be a mosquito here in Hawaii. I have a question.
Could be a mosquito.
When I was a kid, I have a question. When I was a kid, we were told as we were growing up that when we get to, I think it was 6th grade or 7th grade, that required reading, we are going to read in class George Orwell's 1984. So in the 60s, that was the future for us. So finally, we got to whatever, it was 6th grade, and I read the book, and I was fascinated. And it seems that, they were describing what's happening now. But I just wonder, Orwell might have been some kind of whistleblower, fictionalizing it so he could write about it. Maybe this has been going on all along. And the illusion that we've had freedom was just that. And that's the best way to control slaves, is to make them think they're free. So now, I don't know what's going on, that they're just so cocky and arrogant, they don't care if we know that we're slaves. No,
they don't care. They want us to know.
It's just upping the fear. Yeah,
a lot of people. That's the point, isn't it? I was very influenced at a certain point in my research by Michael A. Hoffman II, who, most people cast aspersions on for being some sort of fascist, but he wrote a book on secret societies that is just wonderful, and I've read it several times. Very short book, Michael A. Hoffman. But when I read him, I realized that it's all here, and that he said that there would be a phase that we were just entering, and he wrote that in the 90s, that he called revelation of the method, and that they would. And this is true of Satanists. Satanists have to tell you what they're doing so that they can get your complicity. And even your silence or even your disbelief is complicity if they let you know what they're doing. Well, that's kind of what's going on now, is the revelation of the method is happening. They're showing us everything. I mean, their pedophilia, and there's no apologies anymore, that Hollywood stars are the poor, pathetic things, all MK Ultra'd, and everything is out in the open. And that's what makes people think that it's getting more and more evil. Well, maybe it is, but to me, it's mostly that it's all out in the open now. It's all just right there. And now, how can you say you didn't know? You can't. You do know. You can see it. And so now it's sort of incumbent upon us, with revelation of the method, to really do something and not claim ignorance. And that's good for
that's a good point.
That's really good.
We have about 5 minutes or 4 minutes. What can we do?
I just told you.
Okay, but
to witness what is going on and make decisions about what you're doing. I mean, I know 60s people who decided they would just kind of go away. They would just go, and I still have people say, Elana, where can I go where I won't have to put up with all this? You know what? I'm not interested in that. I want to be in the fray. You incarnate here to take on the problems that we are having. You don't incarnate here to be self-satisfied and in your cozy little nest. At least that's how I look at it. I admit that I have an attitude about that, because I knew 60s people who did that. And you know what? I'm not one of those. I want to be in the fray. I want to be on the front lines. And so for me, with people with what I've told you today, what I recommend is start looking at your lifestyle and start studying and exploring. You've got the whole internet at your disposal. The ways to detox heavy metals. There are people who are pursuing, if you have any Morgellons lesions or you know people who do, there's a lot of information on the web of what to do about Morgellons outbreaks. And start figuring out your Wi-Fi, your relationship with your router. Turn it off at night. Put your head to the north when you sleep. And really start examining your lifestyle of, what you're subject to in the wireless way, and re-examine that and see if you're living in balance, so that you're not being too plugged in. Like, I don't own a cell phone, right? I don't own a cell phone. I don't want one. I have a landline. It's fine. People don't need to know where I am 24/7. And I'm not important enough that anybody needs to either. I try to limit my wireless. I live very Spartan, and I devote myself to writing, and just kind of take a look at yourself of how the output and the input is and where the balance is.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We have 1 minute. Do you want to kind of summarize how you get your books and what books are there? And
my books are available on Amazon, of course. Evil Amazon, and I have a Facebook presence. I have a closed Facebook group that is a few thousand people and I'm very picky to people who want to pursue the science of this. And all the connections to all the things that have to do with it, such as vaccinations, such as all the rest. And then I have my site, ElanaFreeland.com.
Thank you so much. I have one question when we hang up. I just wanted to ask you. Thank you, everybody. Aloha. Aloha, Kevin. Aloha.
Aloha. Aloha, oi.
Aloha.
Aloha. Great talking to you.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
In breaking news, a visiting Syrian diplomat reported today that their population is evolving rapidly and advancing into a fifth-dimensional consciousness. They are seeking peace with all cosmic cultures, which may mean that the Earth will be asked to join the prestigious Galactic Federation of Light Alliances. Please join Debbie West and Michael Hathaway on Lost Knowledge, Saturdays, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in Studio A, for the latest breaking news on the Star Visitor's peaceful contact and the ongoing project of cleansing the Earth.
Who are you? I am the architect. I created the Matrix. I've been waiting for you. Why am I here? You are the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincerest efforts, I have been unable to eliminate from what is otherwise a harmony of mathematical precision, which has led you inexorably here. You haven't answered my question. The Matrix is older than you know, as you are undoubtedly gathering. The anomaly is systemic, creating fluctuations in even the most simplistic equation. Choice. The problem is choice.
Right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Be here Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for Private Eye Matrix Revealed with Monique Lessin.
Even the government admits that 9/11 was a conspiracy. But did you know that it was an inside job? That Osama had nothing to do with it. that the Twin Towers were blown apart by a sophisticated arrangement of mini or micro nukes. That Building 7 collapsed 7 hours later because